Hey everyone, and hope you're all having a fabulous start to the week. I'm just going to quickly share this across to my page. So I wanted to come in and do this video today. So if you find you are watching this now, it'll be 100% relevant to the current energy. But if you happen to watch this later on as a replay, a little bit later on, then just take out a little bit, which I'm going to refer to as to Mercury Retrograde. So I'm just quickly sharing this, so just give me 2 seconds. So I wanted to come in and do this video because I'm going to leave that. So I always get these intuitive nudges throughout my dreams that come in. Hey Tracy, hey Deb, hey Peter, where if my soul has this really important message that I need to share, it drives me crazy in my sleep, and I feel like I have to go through every single step, and therefore that becomes the topical conversation of where I have these Facebook Lives. So today I wanted to come in and talk about whether you are focusing on your desires or feeding your fears. With Mercury Retrograde, it's this one's actually a really nice, gentle, subtle energy that's coming through, but it still has a potent energy about it, which is about unlocking all of your biggest stories and revealing your truths, which I call Mercury Retrograde is that time where we get truth bombs. What I mean by that is we can have moments where fears come in, and then a part within your soul goes, hey, do you actually really believe that? So as you know, where we put our focus becomes our attention. So I'd love to know if any other people are starting to find some old baggage coming to the surface currently right now. So what happens is when we have these fears or old limiting beliefs come to the surface, they first create, obviously, they're first a thought that is created within our mind. But what happens is the moment that you attach a feeling to it, it sends off a physiological response in your body. And what that does is that activates the body to go into fight or flight mode. So it believes that it is in danger, and therefore it just sends off more adrenaline in the body and creating more of a circulation of fear feeding through your body on a physiological level, and therefore your mind and your emotions are just feeding all of these fears around whether you want to move in the direction of chasing your dreams is what I call it, or the desires that you want. And so therefore when your fears come up, this is the thing that I really want to share about this, is the awesome thing about this when this comes up is it's actually a message from your soul giving you an opportunity to break through these old patterns. So your body has become so accustomed to when you have these thoughts that create fear base within you to send off that physiological reaction in your body as a distraction tactic to take you away from digging deeper and exploring further that original question of what do you want. And so therefore this is where the exciting thing comes, is that when you understand what is actually being revealed to you, then you can dive down and explore further what the original question is, which is what do you want? Where are you focusing your energy on? Are you going to continue feeding those fears and keep your body in that physiological response of fight or flight, of always being anxious, allowing those fears to have doubts and anxiety and completely detract you away from being able to follow the pathway of being able to follow your dreams, or even have the courage to take the first step towards doing something that means something so important for you. And what can happen is when you get locked into that physiological response, it can be really, really, really hard to break that pattern. So I'm going to share with you how you break that pattern, because fears create frustration. And then when you become frustrated about being stuck in those fears, you get stuck in that pattern of fear, frustration, and that keeps you trapped inside your own logical mind, and therefore you keep finding all the reasons why you are fear, why you have doubts, why you have anxiety, and therefore all you're doing is reinforcing the very thing that you don't want. So the absolute fastest way to break that pattern, because for me, I've always envisioned when we have these patterns like almost like when you see this goes to show my age, when you had record players and you put a record on and you put the little needle down and it used to play the song. Well, the needle is your thought. The record becomes the emotion of what are you going to allow that emotion to fuel you towards. So you can allow that fuel to feed your fears, or you can actually lift the needle and stop that circulation of fear entering into your reality, and understanding that of course they're going to be there. If you've had limiting thoughts or beliefs that have held you back from even taking the first step of pursuing anything that you want to, it's natural that they are going to play out, but the difference is you don't need to feed it or focus your energy into that. And so therefore you want to be able to look at how do you stop that physiological reaction which is causing you to stay focused on those fears. And the fastest way to be able to interrupt that pattern or interrupt that record from playing is to, now it's so freaking simple, is to just walk away and take half a dozen big long diaphragmatic breaths. What happens is when we get into these fear-based or frustrated emotional and mental states within our own self, we start to shallow breathe. So we breathe from the top of our lungs, and therefore that only exacerbates the situation and holds your body in that physiological response of fight or flight. But the moment that you actually walk away and actually bring your attention to focusing deeply on your breath, means that you're actually breathing really deeply into your lungs to allow them to expand. You instinctively interrupt that pattern of fear-based thoughts, and therefore resets your energy, resets that physiological response, and therefore naturally resets your thoughts. And therefore it only usually takes, anywhere up to between 5 and 12 breaths to rebalance yourself from those fear-based thoughts and emotions, to reset the energy, to bring yourself back to a neutral state. And that's why they say taking long deep breaths is like a form of meditation, because it interrupts any pattern that's happening. So this is where we learn the concept that we don't need to fight what's already occurring within us. We surrender to them and accept that they're there, but it doesn't mean you need to play that game of continuing to exacerbate those fear-based emotional response. We want to be able to break that emotional response and bring yourself back to a soul-based space where you can actually drop down and therefore go in and ask yourself the question of what is it you want? Because frustration is only a form, or getting some insightful information coming through, because you're not fulfilling what it is that you want, that you're allowing these fears, you're allowing those doubts and anxieties prevent you or block you from taking that step. So it creates anger and frustration, and then we tend to spend more time focusing on the fears and the frustration, and that becomes the distraction tactic that has been a pattern that's been run. So we want to break that pattern and that cycle, and we do that through focusing on our breath. And I know it seems so simple, but it's so natural within ourselves to fight the very thing that we need, to resist the very thing that we need. I know there are many a times when I am doing some work and I'll be getting really frustrated and have moments where I feel like I'm losing my shit, and my husband will come in and go, just walk away and just take 5 minutes out for yourself. And I know that's exactly what I need to do, but at that very given moment I want to resist what it is that I want, and it takes me a couple of seconds to break that cycle, and that's exactly what I do. I walk off and I go and take that time away to break that pattern of feeding the frustrations and fears, and therefore that allows me to then be able to go back and ask myself that divining question, which is, what do I want? And therefore that allows you, once you have broken that pattern, when you ask that question, so much more clarity comes up, because when you ask your soul what it is that when you ask your soul a question, it must retrieve the answer. So when you ask a powerful question like, what do I want? Or show me what I want, Therefore, immediately that answer will start coming into your mind, and therefore your brain becomes so much more expansive and focuses on the desires and the direction that you want to go in, and breaking those patterns and breaking those cycles and having the courage to take the next step forward. And therefore that builds a new energetic momentum to be able to move forward in the direction of where you want to go in. And therefore once you get there, then you can bring in other questions like, what is it that you need to embody to be able to bring in those things that you want to attract? Or what are the action steps that I need to do in order to pursue what it is that I want? And that being on a beingness level and a doingness. So we need to be able to do tasks to be able to get where we want, but we also need to be in alignment or embodying the energy within your own self, so therefore it becomes that attraction magnet for what it is that you want to attract. But what I'm trying to just share with you is that it's so easy to get caught up in the cycle of just continuing to feed your fears, and that's only going to give you the exact same shitty outcomes and results that you've always had. And I know that if you're watching this video, it's because you're sick of that and that you're aware of that, but you just don't know how to break that cycle. So as I mentioned, the number one best thing that you can do to realign and reset your energy and your thoughts and emotions and break those old patterns is to walk away and just concentrate on your breath. Now, I will be 100% transparent here and say that when I focus on my breathing, I actually talk myself through it, because as humans, we have so much internal dialogue going on inside of our head. And if you've got into a space where you have had fears or frustrations or doubts or anxiety, you're already inside of your head having these internal conversation, and that's completely disconnecting you from the most infinite source of wisdom, which is your soul. So rather than fight that and think that, well, you can just go from having chaos in your head to be able to just take a couple of breaths and your brain is just going to be like, oh, this is awesome, and just go into that beautiful space of quietness. It's certainly not. So we may as well use that mind that's been running crazy towards our fears and redirect it back to the channel of being able to connect into that intuitive, soulful version of self. So when I go through the breath, I actually count in. So I'll be like, breathe, 1, 2, hold, 1, 2, breathe out, 1, 2. And I will just keep repeating that, so that my mind is channeled towards what it is that I'm doing. I'm hearing myself repeat these words, so my body then starts to align with what I'm talking about. My unconscious mind is knowing the reason you're doing this is to de-stress, to neutralize your energy and bring you back into focus towards what it is that you want. And therefore everything, your mind, body and soul and your spirit, also come into complete alignment with what it is that you're doing. So therefore when you go in and ask the question of what do you want, your mind, body and soul and spirit are all working as one awesome unit towards being able to achieve finding out those answers and then taking those actionable steps. Now, just because things are simple doesn't mean that they're not potent and powerful, because they are. Sometimes I find some of the most simplest things that I do are the most powerful things to bring yourself back into not just alignment, but bringing you back to that soulful truth of being able to get to the actual core of what's creating or activating those fears and frustration. So I really hope that this all gives you something to go away and think about, and the next time you may feel frustrated or feel some fear-based thoughts or limitations that come and present to you over the coming weeks, because Mercury Retrograde goes from February the 17th, which is today, through till March the 10th, but there's usually there's always the shadow side, so before and afterwards. So, you know, give or take up until about the 17th of March, we can have these types of energies come up, and I really would love for you to know how to be able to navigate through this rather than feeling like life is happening to you. You now have a really powerful tool to be able to implement anywhere at any given time to be able to help bring you back into soulful truth and be able to help you manage your energy towards the things that you want. Because in the 25 years I've been doing this, I can tell you most of the times people can tell me all the things that they don't want, and find it a real challenge to be able to ask the question of what they do want. And therefore that is the reason why things show up for you the way that they are, because if you have confusion and frustration and your energy is scattered all over the place, that's exactly what it is that you're attracting. Yet when you have crystal clear clarity around the direction that you want to go in, that therefore starts to transpire and starts being reciprocated back to you. So the simple exercise of using your breath to neutralize your energy, it's not saying that it's going to stop those periods from happening, because that's unrealistic. They will happen, but there are gorgeous blessings in those, because it gives you the opportunity to break through those old patterns and cycles that you've done for ages in a much more empowered space. So I hope this helps. Much love to you all. Take care, and remember, you are so much more than what you think you are.